Hello again. Thanks for joining us. This is Space Nuts. I'm your host, Andrew Dunkley, and always good to have your company. Coming up, we have got plenty. We're going to talk about an alien object that turned out not to be as alien as they thought it was. Just depends who was driving, I suppose. Some planets have been found orbiting a nearby star. Can you guess which one? If you haven't read it in the news, you're probably wrong. Well, you could be right. And Starship headed to Mars, and if we've got time, we'll be talking about a couple of other things as well. That's all coming up on Space Nuts.
15 seconds. Guidance is internal. 10, 9. Ignition sequence start.
Space Nuts.
5, 4, 3, 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Space Nuts.
Astronauts report it feels good.
Joining us once again is Professor Fred Watson, astronomer at large. Hello, Fred.
Hello, Andrew. Excellent to see you.
It is good to see you too. Nice shirt, pink. Going with pink.
Pink today. Yeah, it's actually turned chilly here in Sydney. We had 37 degrees yesterday, as I believe you did too. When I looked at the weather report last night. And today it's 22.
Yeah, well, that party, the pool was the perfect location for our 10-year-old grandson's party yesterday because it was a stinker here. We had a big blustery southerly change overnight, and it was 14 when we woke up, which was so nice. It's so nice to have some cool weather because we have had some real rotten days this summer. It's been dreadful. Now, for those who are viewing us at the moment and for those who are listening later, we have another person in the mix today, and her name is Heidi Campo. Hello, Heidi.
Hey, guys. How are you doing?
Very well. It's good to have you along, and the reason is because I'm going away, and that sort of dovetails with Fred just coming back from a trip, and we just didn't have time to double up and fill the time I'll be away. So you will be taking over the hosting chair for 4 or 5 episodes. So Heidi's here to just sort of play observer and see how it's all done. It's not complicated because if it was, we just couldn't do it. I'm sure you'll manage, Heidi, but feel free to jump in anytime you like. And if
I'm armed with plenty of dad jokes.
Oh, perfect. You'll fit in nicely. And for those who may recognize Heidi's name, one of the podcasts in our stable is called Reality Check, the Science of Fiction, which was Heidi's podcast. I believe you do another podcast, though, don't you?
Just Reality Check, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Talking to subject matter experts about the plausibility of sci-fi concepts. It's a little bit on hold right now while I'm practicing real science with some of the research we're doing for NASA right now, but that can be a conversation for the Q&A.
Yeah, very good. All right. Well, it's good to have you along. Now, Fred, we've got plenty of stories to deal with. This first one dates back a few years when something hit the Earth's atmosphere and it ended up splashing down somewhere near Papua New Guinea. And, of course, everybody said, oh, it's an alien spaceship or parts thereof or something from an alien world. But now they've been studying the data, and it might have been something else.
Yeah, it's a he said, she said story now, this one, because we covered this, I think, probably back in 2023. The story is the sort of radar network, which looks for things coming in, detected a meteorite which went through the Earth's atmosphere in 2014, and that is thought to have created a seismic signal that led researchers to believe that the debris from that meteorite would be spread across the ocean floor to the east of Manus Island, as you said, sort of north of Australia.
Yeah.
And in fact, that there is a team from Harvard led by Professor Avi Loeb, whose name crops up quite regularly on this show. He was convinced that because this thing came in at, I think if I remember rightly, it was 47 kilometers per second, that suggests it may well have been an interstellar traveler, a bit like Oumuamua, the famous interstellar asteroid that we've also talked about endlessly on Space Nuts.
Yeah.
So Avi Loeb wanted to find debris from this object because he and his team believed that would essentially allow us to find stuff that was from another solar system, and possibly, because this is his thing, basically engineered stuff from another solar system. Mm-hmm. It may have been evidence of alien life. So he set up an expedition. Basically, he and his team identified whereabouts on the ocean floor these particles of debris from the meteorite would be, based on the seismic signal that had been received, and set about trawling the ocean floor with a magnet, or something like that, basically to pick up all the ferrous material, the iron-containing material, of which they got quite a lot, little spherules of stuff that really was a bit unusual in its chemistry in terms of what we find on Earth. And I think there was a consensus that the material, a scientific consensus that this stuff, whatever it was extraterrestrial, at least, something that had come from beyond the Earth. Fast forward to last week, or the week before, when we had evidence that the seismic signal, which purportedly had been used to determine where this stuff would have fallen, that seismic signal has been reanalyzed, and it turns out that it was most likely not the object entering the atmosphere, but a truck going around the corner just outside where the seismograph is. It had all the hallmarks of a truck. And so, there was a bit of, I think there's a publication to the effect that, well, this stuff probably isn't extra from another solar system because the seismic signal was from a truck, not from the meteorite.
Oh, my gosh.
Meanwhile, last week, Avi Loeb has got another paper which is currently in preparation, which basically says it doesn't matter. We found this stuff, and our estimate of where the meteorite would have landed did not come principally from the seismic signal. It came principally from the radar determinations. And so they are sticking with the story that the stuff they found on the floor of the ocean is probably from another solar system, if not evidence of alien life, which is, of course, Avi Loeb's touchstone, if I can put it that way.
I'm going to say he's probably half right.
Which half?
The first half.
Yeah, I think that's right. Look, it's great. We need people like Avi because he always thinks outside the box. It's always the same side of the box that he thinks outside of, the alien life, alien intelligence. But often his remarks are taken with not a pinch of salt, but certainly taken with some skepticism's the wrong word. No, it's not. Skepticism by the scientific community.
That would be accurate. Yeah. The big question on my mind is: was it a Ford Ranger or a Dodge Ram?
The truck.
I want to know what kind of truck it was that
I don't
create that.
Yes, it could have been. I think it might have been bigger than that.
Probably, yeah, probably. Gee, it could have been one of our outback road trains.
Well, that would certainly have stirred up the seismograph, wouldn't it?
Definitely, yeah. So tell me how this seismic data works, if that's what they initially detected, even though it barked them up the wrong tree. How do they use seismic data to analyze where something's coming from? That seems very interesting.
So it's the pressure wave, basically. So when an object enters the solar system, enters the Earth's atmosphere, particularly hurtling along at more than 40 kilometers per second, then it creates a shock wave. And that shock wave is basically detected by the seismograph, probably because it shakes the building that the seismograph's in. I mean, there will be an element of it, that shock wave hitting the ground that stirs up the ground a bit. It is extraordinary how sensitive seismographs are. I have a colleague at Siding Spring Observatory who operates as an amateur scientist. He operates a seismograph that can detect, certainly detect explosions in the Hunter Valley coalfield, which is about 300 kilometers away, but also much more subtle things like trains going past. Than the nearest train to his location at Siding Spring is about 100 kilometers away. So yeah.
I strongly suspect whatever the truck was, it wasn't doing 45 kilometers a second.
That's right. Heidi, you had a...
Yeah, I've got a question for you, Fred. So I don't really know how this works, and I'm sure a lot of the listeners don't either. How is this not more of a common problem? Because if they picked up this truck and didn't know what it was, it sounds like there might be protocol in place for them to differentiate between someone walking around in the facility versus a vehicle versus something that's, truly a UFO. So do they normally mistaken other objects?
No, that's a really good point, Heidi, because, with a seismograph, people walking around it it's background interference, and it happens all the time. It is a really good point. How did you mix up a truck that's probably going to go around the corner every day with this incoming signal? And I think there may have been some bad luck there, picking out the signal that just happened to be at the right instant in comparison with the radar data. But I think, so seismic signals are really interesting. You can learn a lot just by looking at what the trace is. And in fact, going completely off track, we had a lovely contact in Greenland last month with a scientist actually from the UK who seen the seismic signal of water sloshing around in a fjord in Greenland that went round the world and lasted for 9 days.
Wow.
And that's telling you that there's a really particular kind of characteristic that lets you do the of a seismic signal that lets you do the forensic science, as you could put it, to work out what's happened. And maybe it's just bad luck that they picked up this signal at the truck and said, this has got exactly the kind of trace that you would expect to come from an incoming body, an incoming object.
How fascinating. And by the way, that truck driver's been done for speeding.
47 kilometers per second. Yeah, it would be.
It does remind me of another story we did once about, an alien signal that turned out to be a microwave oven.
Oh, well, yes, that's the great story from Parkes that they're still embarrassed about. It's right, Parkes Radio Telescope.
Yes, indeed. But that's a great story. It's popped up on a couple of websites. If you want to go to cosmosmagazine.com, and chase it up there. Plenty of information, and it is a really interesting story with all the truck driving and weirdness pushed aside. Fred, let's move on to our next yarn, and this one is really exciting because they've thought for some time that there's been planets orbiting a certain star, and now they think they've found them, although this has been a difficult task because of the angle of observation, I believe.
That's correct. Yes, that's right. So the star in question it's well known to astronomers, but not very well known to the outside world, if I can put it that way. It's Barnard's star, and it was discovered by...
Let me guess, someone named Barnard.
Indeed, that's right. I'm trying to remember his first name.
Starts with E.
I think it was Edward, yes. Was it?
I don't know. I'll look it up.
Edgar. No. Was it Edward Barnard? Can't remember. Anyway, Barnard worked at one of the major US observatories, and in, I think, 1914 or thereabouts, certainly the early years of the 20th century, he discovered this star, which has, and I'm going to use the astronomy gobbledygook now, it has the highest proper motion of any other star known. And the proper motion of a star is its motion across the sky. It's as we see it, how fast it moves in the sky. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean it's its true motion, because there's probably a component towards us as well, which you can actually detect differently. But it was 10 arc seconds a year. Remembering an arc second is 1/3600th of a degree, the diameter of a $1 coin held up at 5 kilometers. That's an Australian $1 coin. A tiny angle, and 10 arc seconds isn't many more of them, but it's by far the biggest proper motion of a star known. It's galloping across the sky. And so it's been a favorite of astronomers for, ever since it was observed more than a century ago, or first identified. And astronomers, of course, because it's the next nearest star to the Proxima Centauri system, have looked hard for evidence of planets around it. And now they found them. They found the evidence. There's been a few what you might call tentative measurements that have led people to believe that perhaps Barnard star had planets. But now, because of observations made, if I remember rightly, it's the Gemini North telescope. I should have checked that, shouldn't I? It's observations made, yes, Gemini North in Hawaii. It's observations that have been made by that telescope have actually nailed it, because they have a very sensitive Doppler wobble machine. And Doppler wobble, of course, is the name that we give to the way a star is pulled slightly out of place by the planets going around it. And that pulling and pushing of a star by its own planets is something that we pick up by the radial velocity, the velocity along the line of sight, which I was just talking about. So that has now been confirmed that there are 4 sub-Earths, actually, very small planets. And the point that you were making, and this is what makes it a bit difficult, because you get much more information if the planets are orbiting in a plane that we can see directly along. So that you have the planets passing in front of their star. That's what we call the transit method for discovering planets, but it also gives you much more information about the diameter of the planets, which we don't get from the Doppler wobble technique. So there's still some unknowns about the density of these planets, but they are confirmed to be there. So at last, the big question, are there exoplanets orbiting Barnard star, has been answered.
Aha. Well, that's good news. Bad news for anyone living there, I imagine, being a red dwarf.
It is a red dwarf, that's right, which means that the stars are orbiting sort of within the, within a region. In fact, that most of them orbit just within a few days around their parent star. So they're much closer to Barnard star than Mercury is to the sun. And red dwarfs are bad news in that regard, because they are relatively active. You get these flares of subatomic particles that might fry anything that's on one of the planets. And I think I'm right in saying that none of them are in the habitable zone of Barnard star. That's the region around a red dwarf where you could have liquid water.
Well, if they did have life in that zone, it'd still be perilous, I imagine.
Yes, that's right. Unless it, who knows, with extraterrestrial life, it could be anything.
Yeah.
It could live in the rocks.
Well, that's right. They could be underground. That's absolutely true. And it was discovered by Edward Emerson Barnard in 1916.
So it was Edward. Well
Yes.
done. Thank you.
Yeah, I knew you had it right. You had about 40 guesses, but you got it right. Yeah, it's all good. Okay, if you'd like to read up on that, got the wrong side up. Here we go. noirlab.edu is where you can read the paper on that discovery, NOIR lab.edu. This is Space Nuts. Andrew Dunkley here with Professor Fred Watson and Heidi Campo, our guest presenter. Okay, let's take a quick break from the show to give a shout out to our sponsor, NordVPN. Now, if you're not familiar with VPN or virtual private networks, think of it like a shield that protects you from hackers and scammers trying to hijack your data. It keeps you hidden online, which is super handy anytime you're using public Wi-Fi, and that could be at airports, railway stations, hotels, cafes, shopping malls, basically anywhere that offers open, unencrypted Wi-Fi. Getting hacked and having your personal information stolen, or worse, sold on the dark web isn't fun, but it's avoidable with a VPN. And honestly, there's no better option out there than NordVPN. Right now, Space Nuts listeners get an exclusive deal, 4 months extra for free when you sign up for a 2-year plan. And that's a saving of 74%. Plus, it comes with their 30-day money-back guarantee. All you have to do is head over to NordVPN/SpaceNuts and click on Get NordVPN. You'll see all the current deals and options, including their VPN service, malware protection, ad blocker, tracker blocker, their awesome password manager, and even a data breach scanner. Seriously, have a look at it. nordvpn.com/spacenuts. I've been using Nord for over 2 years now, and I'll be renewing because it's hands down the best security for my needs, and probably for yours too. nordvpn.com/spacenuts. All right, let's get back to the show.
3, 2, 1.
Space Nuts.
Now, let's get on to this story, which the popular press absolutely loves. It's Elon Musk, SpaceX founder, headed for Mars. Well, not personally, although some might say we'd like to see that happen, but it's more about his preparation to colonize Mars, and they're looking at a timeline now to send a mission at the end of next year.
That's correct, Andrew.
But not with people, hang on a sec. Heidi's got to leave us.
Oh,
thanks for jumping in just to learn the ropes. I'm sure you didn't learn anything, but we'll catch up with you real soon and when you take over as host. Thanks, Heidi.
Thank you so
lovely
much.
to meet you, Heidi. See you soon.
All right. Yes, Elon off to Mars, Fred.
That's right. So, this is Elon sort of mapping out his plans for getting to Mars, which it has to be said are, all right, I'll say it, unrealistically ambitious. We've just had, what was it, Starship 8, which was the 8th test launch of the Starship vehicle, which consists of a booster, which is the Falcon Super Heavy, with the Starship vehicle itself perched on top. Starship 8, it was a mixed success.
No.
The booster landed successfully with the what's it called, the chopstick mechanism on the launch pad, so it returns back to its launch pad. Incredible technology, unbelievable stuff. But the Starship itself blew up. Rapid. What was it? Rapid unscheduled disassembly.
That's it.
Yeah. But the point I was going to make was Starship 9 is following close on its heels because Elon is happy to keep getting these things going until it works, as it did with the whole Falcon 9 business when they were practicing trying to bring spacecraft back to their launch site. Took a long time to get it right. Now is absolutely just standard. It's just the normal situation. And I think the record is now, I think it's 26 flights that one Falcon 9 booster has made. And that, it's such a cost-cutting mechanism. It's brilliant stuff. Anyway, going back to Starship. So
I was just going to say, for all his faults and critics, you've got to applaud him for the rapidity of his development process.
That's right.
He finds the problems fast, fixes them, and perfects these things in no time. It's quite remarkable.
It is extraordinary. That's right. An extraordinary person in every way. Anyway, one of the reasons why he's got such haste to get Starship to work, well, there's two really. The main one, perhaps, is that he's contracted to NASA for Starship to be the landing vehicle to get astronauts on the moon for the Artemis 3 flight, which currently is scheduled for 2027. That's got to be right to get these astronauts down onto the surface and back again into an orbit that will take them back to Earth. That is very much part of the schedule at the moment. So he's got to make Starship work, but at the moment it's not doing the orbiter itself. But the other reason is that he wants to send a Starship to Mars at the end of 2026. And the reason for that imperative is, as you and I have spoken about many times, the windows for launching vehicles to Mars come every 2 years and 2 months.
Yep.
And the next one is late in 2026. And that's the one he wants to get. Otherwise, it will be 2029. And that's, when the next window opens. So Elon is planning a robotic flight to Mars with actually their currently under development humanoid robot, which is called Optimus, on board. So there will be a humanoid robot on this thing. He's talking about 2026 and perhaps a landing as well on Mars in 2026, or it will be it will be 2027 when the landing took place. So that's a very, very ambitious schedule. He's got to get the thing right so it doesn't blow up on launch or when it's in orbit insertion. And it would be a real fillip if he could actually get a spacecraft on its way to Mars by 2026, even if it wasn't a lander, even if it was just a flyby or even a going into orbit scenario. But then the other bit is, in fact, we've got a quote from Elon, which I might just read.
Will you understand it?
Starship departs for Mars at the end of next year, carrying Optimus. If those landings, there you are, his ambition is to land.
Yep.
If those landings go well, then human landings may start as soon as 2029, because that's when the next window is open, although he says 2031 is more likely. And I think 2035 is more likely still, because we still have so many issues to solve in terms of putting astronauts into a mission that could last up to 2 years, with all the need for life support, with all the radiation issues, all of that. I think it is a very, very big ask to be thinking about anything before the mid-2030s.
Yeah, I imagine so. I think one of the most exciting parts of this mission, if you can pull it off, is the Optimus robot, otherwise known as the Tesla bot, which is in development. Tesla Incorporated is building it. And by the way, Optimus comes from the TV and movie franchise Transformers, Optimus Prime being one of the main characters. I'm sure you've watched them all, Fred, just like I have. But that's where the name comes from, Optimus Prime from Transformers. But this is quite remarkable, the way this is being developed, and you did say humanoid type robot, and it does look every bit humanoid. And it's not just Tesla that's developing robots. Other companies have been doing this for a long time, and we're really starting to get well down the road of, I suppose we're at the beginning of the spectrum of perfection of robotics, independent thinking, operating robots, and that's what this is ultimately going to be. I think that's really exciting. Some people are probably scared witless because they've watched too many science fiction films about artificial intelligence, but this could be the next giant leap in technology, and I think they'll pull it off. It's already starting to happen. So, that's exciting news. Anything more to add about Elon's trip?
Not really. I will not be surprised if this happens, just knowing the drive that Elon has to get stuff happening, get stuff fixed.
Without people like Elon in our history, a lot of stuff would never have happened.
Yeah,
and
that's right.
You can pinpoint people in history that have done great things because they didn't listen to the detractors and the critics. They just said, "No, I've got this idea and I'm going to make it work," and away they went.
Yeah, I mean, it's also now complicated by the position that Elon occupies within the Trump administration.
Yeah,
and we've got all sorts of concerns being expressed about conflicts of interest. There's a lot of stuff happening that is counterintuitive, perhaps, and not necessarily going altogether well. And that sort of, in a way, clouds the issue because The Elon is basically a genius, and that's extraordinary. But it may be that now, is overshadowed by other things that are happening.
Yes, and that's rather unfortunate. But when you pick sides in politics, you disenfranchise half the people.
You do. That's exactly right, and which is why Tesla's sales are falling.
Yes, and like I've seen videos of people, big name people, and I won't point the finger at them. They've already become well known through their own exploits, giving away their Tesla vehicles in protest. Yeah, so he has kind of ostracized himself, I suppose you could say, in some ways, but he probably doesn't care.
I don't think so. No, that's right. And so let's see what happens.
Yes, indeed. All right. If you'd like to read that story, it's at phys.org. That's phys.org, not FIZZ. I don't know what that would take you to.
Probably better not to find out.
Now I want to look.
0G, and I feel fine.
Space nuts.
A couple of quick stories to finish up. Sphere X telescope is now up and running or ready to get, it's off the planet.
It is. That's right. It's launched on Tuesday last week. I think it's on a quite an interesting initial trajectory. It was a polar orbit that it went into to start with, and it's basically a telescope, which, by the way, only has an 8-inch lens on it, which is kind of the size of most amateur telescopes, but it's got the most extraordinary detectors and this curious heat exchange system, which makes the whole thing look like one of those cones of silence that you put around dogs when they're not supposed to scratch their whatever it is, or pull their stitches out from whatever's been done to them. We had one of those for our little poodle when he underwent a certain operation, which he tolerated for less than a minute.
Yeah, yeah. I've often seen cat videos of them just basically beating themselves to death trying to get those things off.
Yeah.
Just for the record, phys.org is unreachable. FIZZ. Yeah. So I don't know what's going on there, but I would have thought that would be a URL worth a couple of bucks.
Might be on the dark web, Andrew.
Gee. And I've just tried to look at it. Yeah. I'm a marked man now.
Yeah, bad, yeah.
All right, Sphere X, very exciting, and that mapping of the universe, it's going to happen rather quickly.
Yes, that's right. It's a project. I didn't mention. It's the idea is to map the universe because it's basically going to look at the whole sky. And that, I think, is why it's in a polar orbit. It maps the glow of the universe, in a sense, from galaxies and the light of distant star systems. And one of the reasons for Sphere X is to pin down our understanding of the universe's first period, the 10 to the minus 32 of a second, in which it inflated by a factor of 10 to the 50, the epoch of inflation, as it's called.
Amazing. And one quick one, Butch and Sonny, 9 months on the International Space Station, and by the time this is released, they might be back on Earth.
They might indeed, which would be great for them. It would be good to see them coming back home because we have had them up there since June last year.
Yeah. They're only 8.5 months late for dinner.
Yeah. I'm sure their relatives will all be delighted to see them.
Yes, I don't doubt it, and we wish them well. We're just about done, Fred. Thank you very much.
Great pleasure, Andrew. Good to talk as always, and we'll see you next time.
We will. And thanks to Hugh in the studio who turned up today. He took time out of his efforts to map the universe by hand. And from me, Andrew Dunkley, thanks for your company. Oh, don't forget to visit our website and do a few things there, or our social media sites. Always good fun. But until next time, thanks for your company. We'll see you on the very next episode of Space Nuts. Bye-bye.
Space Nuts. You've been listening to the Space Nuts podcast.
Mission complete, Houston.
Available at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or your favorite podcast player. You can also stream on demand at Bytes.com. This has been another quality podcast production from Bytes.com.